So recently I had the chance to speak with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. And if you've been living under a rock, Elon Musk is obviously richest man in the world, founder of Tesla, SpaceX, X, which some people might say, no, he wasn't the founder of Twitter. Well, X, which it's now X, but also the previous X, which then merged and became PayPal, Neuralink, The Boring Company, XAI, OpenAI, you get the gist. Vivek Ramaswamy is obviously running in the Republican primary for president of the United States. He's been making quite an impact recently, rising in the polls, placing third only behind former President Donald Trump and current Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Now, this was quite the opportunity in front of an audience. The questions, of course, were supposed to be mostly for Vivek. And I tried to get a bit of a 2-for-1 special with my question addressing both Elon and Vivek. And we'll get to my question in a bit, but first, let's throw it to the sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Core Essentials. So Core Essentials is a company that makes belts. Here's an example of one of their heavy-duty gun belts, but you might notice that there are no holes in it. Well, that's where the magic comes in, because if you look on the inside here, you can see a track system. You see where most belts have a hole every inch or half inch or so. Core utilizes an inside track system that has up to 40 adjustments. That's an adjustment every quarter inch. And it's basically one size fits all. You can cut it down to your ideal size. As you can see on the inside of the belt here, they have measurements. So if you know your pant size, your waist size, you can mark it here, and then they suggest adding 4 inches, and you can cut it off right around there. And I'm gonna cut it off at the 36-inch mark. Now that the belt has been cut, you get your belt buckle out. You got this little swingy thing here. You place the belt inside, and then you close this little swivel with the spikes in it. It snaps right into place, very tightly secured. And from here, you can see it's just as easy as putting the belt in, and then you hear the clicks. Flipping it around here is just so you can see better, so it doesn't release unless you hit this little lever here, and then boom, it releases. Also, if you're more into leather belts, they have those as well with the inside track technology. As you can see, it looks like a normal leather belt. You could easily wear this with dressier clothing, and you could use it either as a normal belt or carry a gun with it. So click the link in the description box down below, tryblink.co/tacticalbelts to pick up your Core Essentials EDC belt today. Now, although I was one of the first people to raise my hand as speaker, virtually all the other speakers got to go before me. And I get it, the other accounts have larger followings, they're more well known. I'm but a humble YouTuber and ex-poster. But as time went on, time was getting tight for Vivek. He had to go to another event or whatever. So he didn't have all the time in the world to answer all the questions. So let's get into the audio and then I'll explain as we go. Also, just for reference, ignore the listener, speaker, and the wave pattern stuff that indicates someone's talking or not. For whatever reason, the recording of the space is off. I guess it's a glitch with the site, but you know, when you hear me talking, I'm talking, and you'll just have to recognize the voices.
My view is we can handle the truth, trust the public with it, and then that's going to actually, ironically, rebuild trust in institutions that the public has otherwise now long correctly lost.
Hey, Vivek.
It's awesome. Thank you.
Given the problems with the
Appreciate
last
it, man.
election cycle, we had the election infrastructure problems, obviously.
Take one last one, David, and then we'll wrap.
Can Vivek hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to go to ask
Hello?
a question. If
Well, we have Ian and Nuance,
Yeah.
bro. How about
Maybe we'll take them together.
Can we,
We'll take them
can
together.
American
Yeah,
go
we'll
first?
take them together.
Is that possible?
Oh, come on.
That's awesome.
Relax.
So Vivek, obviously there were problems with election infrastructure during the last election cycle, but I think one of the
Nuance?
Ian?
Ian?
I don't think
Nuance, you
I
go
don't think,
first, and then Ian.
Vivek
I don't think
David.
you can hear nuance,
Yeah.
so I'll just
I
ask
don't
my
think
question.
Vivek can hear me.
So hey, Elon, David, Vivek, great conversation. Thanks for having me up.
So as you could see, much like the recording of the space, the actual space when it was live was having some technical difficulties. By the way, a lot of you guys say you don't get the notifications for this video, so if you can hit the like button, it really helps push this video out in the YouTube algorithm so other people can see it. So very much appreciated. Hit that like button. This is an experience I and many others have experienced quite often on spaces where you're speaking, but certain people can't hear you for whatever reason. So usually what you have to do is drop down and then come back up, and then that usually solves the problem. But just my luck, everybody else is able to be heard, ask their questions, no problem. But when it comes to yours truly, of course, the technical glitches happen where they can't hear me. Of course, everybody else could hear me, basically just Vivek couldn't. And I saw Vivek was pressed for time. A bunch of other people went first despite me raising the hand first. I get it. It's fine. But this is an American presidential candidate. We had at least 2 foreigners on stage that were not American citizens and did not live in the United States of America. The first being Mario Nawfal, who, as I understand, is Australian but living in Dubai. He regularly hosts spaces, often with prominent political figures in them. And I don't want to go into all the controversy, but recently there have been media hit pieces against the guy. He's allegedly quite litigious, so we won't go much further into that. You can look into it on your own. But after Vivek answered the question that was posed to him, I tried to butt in to ask my question. And you can see Ian Miles Chong, another prominent Twitter account with many followers, an account that Elon often interacts with. He tried butting in to ask his question. And at this point, I thought it was annoying because he could clearly hear that I was asking my question first. And again, this is an American presidential candidate. I feel like at the very least, the Americans should be able to ask of their own presidential candidate questions before foreigners. Ones who live overseas, aren't American citizens, and haven't been to the United States in over a decade, if not ever. The guy is also paid by the Russian state via their state media outlet, Russia Today. As you can see, this is their website where he is listed as an op-ed author. None of this is listed on his Twitter account. I remember back in the day when Twitter used to write on the accounts of certain journalists who worked for these outlets that this is part of state-affiliated media. And I do hope they bring that back because I think transparency, a more informed public, I think it's important when it comes to these types of things. Anyways, for the sake of brevity, I won't go more into it, even though there's a lot more information. Anyways, I make a joke/serious point saying, hey, can the American go first this time? And Ian seems to have a bit of a problem with this. He goes, oh, come on. And Elon Musk got a laugh out of this. He thought it was pretty funny, so he chuckled. So I continue trying to ask my question, and Vivek still can't hear me. So what happens is I drop down from speaker and then re-request to become a speaker again. But I thought maybe I was doomed. Maybe they wouldn't bring me back up. Maybe this was it for me. Maybe it was just going to be this question from Ian, and then Vivek moves on because he was, short on time. So this was probably going to be it. But luckily, the host brought me back out. Special thank you to Mr. David Sachs, the host, and others like the speaker ALX, who also helped reach out on my behalf. Now, before we get to my question, I just want to point out that Ian asked his question, and Vivek answered his question. Everybody got one question. So I'm going to start the clip where Vivek ends answering Ian's question, and then watch what happens.
That puts us in then a strong position from a trade perspective to then take a look at where we stand vis-a-vis China. So I could go on for hours on this one, and we could, but we'll take one last question from the other guy, and we'll wrap.
Yeah, I'd love to grill you on China, because you mentioned once that you were banned from China, and that's a concern of mine because I criticize them quite a bit, and I'm always worried about traveling through Hong Kong. I mean, have they given you a reason why they banned you?
But just in the interest of time, I just want to make sure we can get to the last question here. I know I've been waiting for a while.
That was the last question. That was literally my last question.
Cool, awesome.
Okay, appreciate
Vivek,
it.
you can hear me now, right? Awesome,
yes.
Cool.
How you doing, man?
Awesome.
So that's pretty amazing. And I don't want to come off too mean here, but I mean, he asked his question, he had it answered, and they're clearly pressed for time. They want to go to the last question, but he continues on and then tries to ask another question. And they go, yo, Ian, we're pressed for time. Nuance has been waiting for a long time. We're going to get to that last question. And Vivek clearly has to go. But then Ian says, oh, no, that was my last question, even though he literally just asked another question. I mean, it's pretty incredible. But Vivek can hear me, so we're good. So without further ado, here is my question.
So election infrastructure was obviously like a big issue in the last election cycle, but I think even more so is election just funding for candidates, right? So the left was outraising the right pretty significantly in a lot of races. What do you plan to do in the upcoming election, both in the primary and the general, if you are nominated, so you can outraise people like Soros, who in the last election cycle, I mean, 170 million, he was the top person out of any individual, and then including on top of the 170 million, 140 million and other things, another 60 million, his not even getting into open society foundations that did about $1 billion during that time. Do you think the richest man in the world should get involved to maybe, take over Soros in that position? I don't know if Elon has any thoughts about that, but what are your thoughts on that? How are you going to, beat the left at their own game?
Well, That's.
Oh, sorry,
I'm not going to speak on behalf of Elon. Elon, you want to go first?
Well, sure.
All right, so before we get to their answer, just a little bit of commentary. So I'm asking Vivek about how he's going to be different, how he's going to change things from other Republicans who are running, how he's going to be the one who's going to be the most effective at raising money, beating the left at their own game, because money does matter in elections. Sure, it's not everything. You can have situations like Donald Trump, who was outraised significantly in the presidential elections, but still ultimately won in 2016. But money is important. It does play a role. Having infrastructure in place when it comes to the elections, when it comes to campaigns, this is important. Having the legal team to challenge things and look for discrepancies, etc. That takes money. That takes resources. Now, if you want to see what I'm talking about when it comes to beating Democrats at their own game, here's the website Open Secrets. And if we scroll down, here we can see a list of the top 20 PACs by name, and here at the top you see Act Blue, with the total amount in the 2021-2022 election cycle raised over $2 billion, $2.2 billion. The next closest PAC is Win Red. This is basically the Republican equivalent of Act Blue, which is for the Democrats. Win Red did 1.1, close to $1.2 billion. They were outraised by the Democrats by over $1 billion just in that PAC alone. The next one down, you see Senate Majority PAC, and then below that, you see Senate Leadership Fund. Senate Majority PAC is the Democrat equivalent of the Senate Leadership Fund. Senate Leadership Fund being for the Republicans. The Democrats, once again in this instance, outraised the Republicans by about $100 million. But a few more metrics. Here we have some donor demographics, and if we scroll down, we can see this part where it says how many donors have given over $2,900, the maximum allowed contribution to a single candidate, in contributions in the 2022 cycle. And we see at every level for female donors, Democrats get way more than Republicans. And for male donors, there are only two instances where they give more to Republicans than to Democrats. The first is between $200 and $2,899. There you see it's about $241 million to Republicans versus almost $200 million to Democrats. The next is between $2,900 and about $10,000. There, the males give $246 million to Republicans versus about $231 million to Democrats. In every other instance, males, females, they all give more to Democrats. And let's go to the highest level. We see for females giving $1 million plus, they give only $18.5 million to Republicans, but $52 million to Democrats. When it comes to males giving over $1 million, it's $82 million to Republicans, but $96 million to Democrats. And here's what I was talking about when it came to Soros. You see that he donated $140 million to political causes quietly in 2021. That's in addition to the $170 million that he personally contributed during the 2022 midterm election cycle to help Democrat campaigns and political action committees. As you can see here on Open Secrets, who are the biggest donors? And we're picking the 2022 election cycle. And if we look right at the top here, is George Soros, who donated basically double the next person down. So he contributed almost $180 million, all to Democrats. The next person down is Richard Uihlein, also known as Dick Uihlein, who did about $90 million, all to Republicans. And again, that's not even counting the $140 million into politically charged nonprofits that he gave just 1 year before the midterm elections, which he did through the Open Society Policy Center. That's not including the $60 million he gave to other charitable 501c3s, which are theoretically prohibited from participating in politics, but you know, that often happens all the time. That's not including the $1.5 billion in total 2021 expenditures from his Open Society Foundations organization, of which over $400 million of it was spent in the United States, and that's not even including the 2022 numbers, which we don't even have yet. Which, if it's anything like previous years, the expenditures are probably similar. So I kind of lay it up there for Vivek to answer, tell me what he's going to do about it, but also for Elon to chime in if he wants to see if, hey, will he be the new anti-Soros? Will he come out there as the richest man in the world? Which, as you can see from this Forbes real-time list of the richest billionaires in the world, Elon Musk is the richest man in the world at $257.3 billion at the time of this filming, beating out the next richest person in the world, Bernard Arnault and family by over $40 billion. So imagine if he comes in as the richest man in the world, an American, and puts those resources towards politics that counteract what George Soros is doing. It would be immense. It would be incredible. So let's hear what they have to say, and then we'll talk about it.
And, I think this is an important discussion. And Vivek, I think you're winning over a lot of people, I should say, I think, with your position. Because I think, what I've heard you say makes a ton of sense. I think you're winning over a lot of people, actually, in this conversation.
Thank you.
So, yeah. So, my apologies. I actually lost track of.
No, he was just asking about the influence of money in politics.
Yeah. Basically, is the sort of, there are a bunch of things which have these misnomers of like that sound like they're pro-democracy, but they're actually basically ballot harvesting. And there is like this sort of hack that George Soros is really an incredibly talented arbitrager, and he's applied that talent monetarily and politically, and so he figured out that through charitable organizations you can promote causes with pre-tax money, and that doesn't count in any of the political stuff. So it's actually extremely effective. You don't actually attack the candidate; you just attack the positions that they hold, and then you sort of hire a big team to go and like harvest ballots from like nursing homes and all that sort of stuff. These are real things that have happened, and so there's I don't think we should counter corruption with corruption, but. Mm-hmm. But I think we do need to there does need to be like a get out the vote campaign and certainly Republicans need to work harder at winning over voters, and especially in the key sort of Senate races and House races and the presidency. But it's
and I appreciate you saying that, Elon. And for me, the real distinction isn't even between Republicans and Democrats. If we're pro-American, we stand for the principles this nation was founded on. The way I look at it is we're on the same team. And for me in this journey, this is, I think, part of why I came into this as an outsider. I think it will take some measure of people who didn't grow up in professional politics to change that game. This country has blessed me with much, right? And so I've lived, like so many of you on this call, lived the full American dream. And I have, so far, before I wanted to ask anybody else to invest money in this campaign, wanted to invest my own first. And so I've put in over $15 million of my hard-earned money already, precisely because I did not want to take a tin can asking a bunch of other people for permission to run. And then that does come with expectations. And the funny thing is, even in the Democrat Party, many people on a principled basis used to say, keep mega money out of politics. You don't hear that anymore. And that does come with certain ties and expectations that I do think corrupt the way our democratic process works. That being said, a guy like me, if I want to succeed, has to be able to compete. There's an old saying in tennis, you either win or you leave blood on the court. And I don't want to leave blood on the court. I want to win. And, if you guys, I think, this is just a little bit self-interested plug, to be honest with you, but just to be totally transparent as well, other candidates have mega super PACs that have ads on television. We're a third in the Republican primary. We haven't bought TV ads, but it's going to be, whoever wins this election, it's going to be about $2 billion that gets spent in order to do it.
But that was my question.
That's sort of the gist.
How are you going to do it? That was basically my question.
So I hope we do it. But here's how I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it by turning into somebody's puppet. I'd rather lose this election than to bow down to, I think, a lot of the special interests that have broken the system. That being said, here's how we're doing it so far. We got 70,000 small dollar donors in the first few months of this campaign. I'm literally an outsider. I've never had a donor or donor list in my life. And 40,000 was the threshold for reaching the first Republican debate by August. Sitting in early July, we're at 70,000. And so 40% of them are first time ever donors to the Republican Party. Normally that number is 2%, actually. And so, you have a lot of business-minded folks on this call. I'll give you kind of a metric. You want to know how to predict an election. I'm going to give you the best metric to predict an election result. And Trump proved it in 2015. It's not the current polls, right? I mean, people look at the polls, and I'm grateful in the recent versions of them. I'm doing okay. I'm doing well. But that's not what matters. Look at how much dollars are being spent per unit in the polls. So for every percentage point in the polls, look at how many ad dollars are being spent for that percentage point. For most candidates in the 2015 election, Jeb Bush, you want to talk about Scott Walker, Chris Christie back then, millions of dollars per percentage point in the polls. For Donald Trump back then, it was thousands, 3 orders of magnitude lower. And in this race, we're seeing the same thing. There's the other candidates in the Republican field, millions of dollars in ad buys per percentage point in the polls. In my case right now is literally in the thousands. And so what do we say there? The message is lifting us up. Now the bet is we hope that if you build it, they will come. But that's where I need people. And so the maximum anybody else can give to the campaign directly is $6,600. And if somebody wants to go to Vivek2024.com right now and do it, we would appreciate it. But there's all kinds of, there's the game is so complicated. There's all kinds of other organizations that spend money supporting candidates. And my model is, we will build it, which is to say, deliver a clear message that is honest, that is transparent, that trusts the public, believes the public can handle the truth, that wants to restore the 1776 principles that made this country great without apologizing for it, do it earnestly, do it sincerely, and bet that the system works as it's supposed to. And at least gratefully, I'm able to put in, I don't have billions of dollars to put in, but short of that, what I do have will stop at nothing, which gives us a good advantage to start. But it's going to take a lot of really everybody, whether it's a dollar or whether it's people putting in massive amounts of money to actually lift this across the finish line. And so I'm hoping for a chance to introduce myself to the country on the debate stage starting in a few weeks. I think that's going to be critical in this race. I'm going to continue to use, frankly, forums like this one. I mean, this is great. Think about it. There's no separate media intermediating our messages, right?
Exactly.
There's nothing pre-filtered. A guy like me couldn't compete, Elon, if it weren't for modern media like this. And so here's to hoping that changes the game.
So I have to say, while I appreciate Elon and Vivek attempting to answer my question, I was a bit disappointed in the answers. Firstly, I'm not sure they fully understood the question I was asking, because when Vivek was first answering the question, he wasn't really answering the question. That's why I had to clarify again, like, hey, how are you going to do this? But also in describing it to Elon, he talked about, he's asking about the influence of money in politics. That's not what I was asking about. Obviously, money has influence in politics. I'm just saying the Democrats do it so much more. They have more money. How are you going to match that? How are you going to outraise them? What are you going to do about it? And do you think someone like Elon, who's got more money than everybody, he's the richest man in the world, certainly in America by a lot, he could easily outcompete someone like George Soros with his own money many times over. So with respect to Elon, I have to say, I really hope he reconsiders. I really hope he has good people around him who are politically minded, but in the right ways. And they make him understand, look, this isn't about playing a game of like, let's be as corrupt and as terrible as the other side. No, the whole idea of putting your money behind this sort of stuff is to put America back on the right track, to make us, honorable again, not corrupt. Try to weed out this type of corruption. You can do that with your money. If you think ballot harvesting is bad, if you think mass mail-in ballots are more apt to, fraud and things like that, if that's what you think, you can put money behind that to reverse those types of things. Unfortunately, the game is what the game is right now. In states where it's legal to ballot harvest, that's kind of the game you have to play at the moment if you want to win. But ideally, when you do win, if you want to get rid of that, you have the means to do so if you put the effective resources behind that to make that change. And of course, let's not be naive. Any moment where someone becomes too powerful, too influential, if they're throwing money around trying to influence politics, the parties that be, the powers that be, are going to try to stop that as much as possible. And I'm sure there's a fear aspect there saying, look, this could hurt my companies, this could hurt my business, they're going to come after me legally, they're going to come after me in all kinds of ways if I start throwing my money around in politics. I get that. I understand that. The problem is, they're already doing that. Elon and his companies are already facing a litany of lawsuits by the DOJ and other entities. And I say, in my opinion, that most of these are frivolous and baseless. They clearly don't like Elon. He's already outspoken. They don't like the things he's saying. They don't like the things he's doing. They already punish him and his companies in legislation where they award his competitors better deals than him. So maybe I'm naive, but I think it's a risk worth taking. I think when it comes to fighting for your country and taking the reins back from people who are destroying the country, especially Soros with the types of DAs that his money has been putting into office that have been destroying once great cities. I think it's a noble goal to put money behind efforts to change that. So I do hope Elon reconsiders this. When it comes to Vivek, he didn't really answer my question. Maybe he doesn't know the answer to my question, and I understand that. I hope he finds an answer to it soon. Because as we briefly looked over some of the numbers, Democrats outraised the Republicans like crazy. You look at some of the Senate races during the midterms where some of the candidates were being outraised 7, 8 to 1. It was crazy. The way the Republican leadership was allocating funds that they were given to some of those races was abhorrent and almost certainly cost Republicans races. And I think if Republicans want a chance at winning now and into the future, they're going to have an answer to this question. How are they going to outraise Democrats? What are they going to do? I want to hear about logistics. I want to hear about infrastructure. I want to hear about the plans they're going to put in place to outraise Democrats and beat them at their own game. I want to hear if they have less dollars coming in, how they're going to stretch that dollar further to beat the Democrats and be more efficient with their spending when it comes to ads and infrastructure, etc. But what do you guys think? Did you guys like the question? What would you have asked? Did you like the answers that Elon and Vivek gave? What are your thoughts on someone like Elon getting involved in politics and getting his billions in there and helping out, counteract someone like Soros? Let me know in the comments down below. Anyways, guys, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Social media links are in the description box below, as well as merch. Support us at nuancebro.com/join. Support today's video sponsor, and I'll see you next time, bro.